Okay, hey guys, nice to meet you all, and thank you for taking the time to join our exciting webinar. For those that aren't familiar with me, I'm Amit. I'm the marketing director here at Radview, and there is a very exciting session ahead. I just want to share a few things before starting. The first one, this webinar is going to be recorded, and you're going to have the full access to the recording on our website. We're going to send an email to each one of you with the link to watch the webinar if you would like to watch it also afterwards. And besides of that, feel free to ask any question that may arise throughout the discussion. We are going to leave 15 minutes in the end for Q&A sessions, in which we will answer each and any of your questions. So there is no one better than our CTO here, Yam, to lead us through this webinar. So Yam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Glad you joined. See many people joining. That's very nice. See some familiar faces, names, and some new ones. So thank you all for joining this session. My name is Yam, as Amit said. I'm a Radview CTO, and I'm going to talk about the things that we did in a few different versions before that we have. So I'll go over it. Um, it's not going to be a complete list of every single thing that we did. More of highlights, things that you need to be aware of that maybe you've missed. And yeah, I will share with you also the full list of everything afterwards. But yeah, let's get started. All right, so I'm going to dive right in and start showing you things that we have in the product that, again, that are either completely new. Some of these features are completely new, like 13.2, which was released like last this week, and some of them are a little bit before during this year. And yeah. All right, so I'll start with just by going instead of by versions, I'm going to go by the product. So I'm going to start with the WebLOAD recorder and talk about the new versions that we have. So we have support for HTTP 3. HTTP 3 is the latest version in the HTTP protocol. It's replacing or using after HTTP 2 and HTTP 1.1. It's technically it's quite different actually under the hood. It's pretty different. It uses UDP rather than TCP. So it has all kind of different ways it's running under the hood. The good news that in terms of the way the syntax that it's working, it's the same as HTTP 1.1. So your scripts, whatever scripts you have, they work the same. And even if you record a new script, it's going to look the same. So it's the same concept. We have the HTTP headers, the response headers, the content. All those concepts are all the same. It's just that the transport itself is different. So it means that it's very easy to switch between them. And I can show you. So inside WebLOAD, you'll have the current or default project options, and you can switch the HTTP versions. So yeah, you can use it either from here or directly in the script. You can do a WL globals version equals 2 or 3. And you can also use it as a mix. So if you have the same script, you run it in the console, you can say, 40% of the users should use HTTP 3, the rest should use HTTP 2 and 1. And another thing that's important to note that it's backwards compatible. So even if you say HTTP 3 and the server doesn't support it, we would automatically try HTTP 2, and if not that, we would fall back to HTTP 1.1. And yeah, so that's that. And now a little bit related, the TLS 1.3. TLS 1.3 is the latest security protocol, SSL. The thing that supersedes SSL is TLS. So the reason it's related is that this is actually mandatory for HTTP3. So HTTP3 always uses TLS 1.3, but some browsers or servers can decide to use 1.3 regardless of the HTTP protocol. So just so you know, it's there. And this one is even simpler from a user's perspective. There's pretty much nothing that you need to do. It's just going to work automatically. So for 99% of the cases, you don't need to worry about it. But if your server is set up to only use that, then you need a newer version of WebLOAD to use. So that's a small thing to remember. If you're using an older version and you have trouble recording, that could be a reason. If you get all kind of errors that you can't connect to a website, then upgrade to a version that has that. All right. Next, we have some new look and feel and way to use to look at the headers when you're looking at a session that you have. So this is some session that I have here. Just ran it, failing with some validation that I have. So there is this small but useful small new feature that we can show the node IDs in the tree. So every request, every node in WebLoad has an ID, ID8, ID9. So sometimes the URLs themselves are either very long or they repeat themselves, they're not unique enough. So if you need to find something that's happening, so this thing failed here at this node number 4, you can see it now here, it's just easier to find. And another thing that we have, which is new, so here on the comparison stuff, we have compare all. I think you know that maybe that one is a little bit older. So compare all looks at all the responses. Here I don't have much, and shows you all the differences. This is useful when you have, so maybe everything is just identical, so it's going to be completely green. If it's a small change, it's going to be yellow, and if it's a bigger change, it's going to be red. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but it's something to just to see and see, oh, those pages are completely different, then maybe it's important. Yeah. So that's the compare all. The new thing is the compare headers. So comparing HTML is comparing the responses, like I showed before. You can do a comparison of them. But sometimes you want to see the HTTP headers to see maybe they're different or maybe they can explain some problem or behavior. So this is a new thing. It's called compare headers, and it's going to show the headers view, but sorry, but in this diff view. So that's a new cool and nice feature. Don't be alarmed if you see many changes like you see here. Those are basically the same pages. They're still very different. So the dates obviously is going to change. The cookie values are going to change. And even things like the default headers can change. We by default don't record anything which we think is not mandatory. So there are some, you can always use record all headers to capture everything. Still, there's going to be differences. So don't be alarmed if you see any difference, but it is useful when something is not working and you have a request it's failing. You can see, oh, what did the recording do, and what did the playback do? So maybe it's a header that's important. Maybe there's a cookie that is missing. So that view makes it easier to spot those things. Previously, it was harder to spot those small differences. So some small cookie is missing, then it's easier to see it in this view. All right, moving along. WebSockets. All right, so that's kind of a big topic. I will show you it, but bear in mind that this is not a training session. I want you to be aware of what I'm going to show you. So I want to, to keep it in the back of your mind that if you ever deal with WebSocket, that this thing exists. But again, this is not definitive training course, but it's more of what's out there and what to watch for. Okay. So WebSockets, is an extension for HTTP protocol. It's another way to send and receive data. Now, it behaves quite different than regular HTTP requests. HTTP requests are always request response. So we ask something, the server responds. The server cannot send us anything unsolicited. It cannot send us updates if they want to. And that's kind of what was the reason for WebSockets creation. It was for this unsolicited messages. So now the server can send us any type of message, and we can receive messages. Sorry, send and receive. Yeah. So it's useful in certain situations where that kind of communication is good, like a chat. You never know when you're gonna get a message. Maybe you're gonna get 10 of them. Maybe you're not gonna get any. So that's WebSockets. So WebLOAD already has support for many years now for WebSockets. And the way it looks like that. So we capture the fact that there was a WebSocket communication. So there is a connect here. And we also capture the send. If we're sending a message, we're going to send it like it used to be in the recording. And we're also showing the received messages as comments. Now, the reason that the messages that we receive are comments and there's not something active is, again, the nature of WebSocket is so that it's unexpected. You never know if you're going to get 10 messages or no messages at all. In some, so yeah, that's why it's not as structured as most of the other cases. And you can see in my example, but there is some structure to it. So here the server is sending us, I'm connected after we connect. And also it's sending here kind of some kind of a session ID. And you can see that the send is sending it out. So this is an example. It's not uncommon for WebSocket to have this kind of a little bit of a structure. We never know what it is, but it can have that. Now, if it was regular HTTP, this would have been correlation, and we have the correlation engine. As you know, it would handle it automatically. It would say, oh, there is a response contain this thing. Let me grab it and send it here. But because of this unexpected nature of WebSockets, we don't have it, right? So the default or normal way to handle a WebSocket is through a handler. So before you even connect, we define a connection. So it's going to be on message. And we're going to say that there's going to be an event and I want to do something with it. Now, what would that something be? Now it depends, because if I'm not even connected yet, I need to wait for the connected method. And if I'm waiting for the session, then it's going to say, oh, now I need to wait for the session ID. I actually have that example written. So that's the manual version of what you need to do if you need to do that, to go through that generic handler route. Yeah, so that's kind of the idiom that what would the on message look like. So I'm capturing here the state. Did I even get connected? Do I have the session ID? And now it needs to know, or if I'm not connected, then wait for that connected method message. Sorry. Okay, so I got it. Then I'm gonna say that I changed the state, or maybe I didn't get it. What to do with it? And then again, so if I'm waiting for the session ID now, so I need to do the extract value. So and I need to do it all up front. And then later in the script, I need to wait. So I'm writing this kind of a loop here. I'm saying, oh, if I'm not connected yet, wait for that message to arrive. And that maybe I need to handle here a timeout. Maybe I never got the message, so maybe I need to error out, right? So that's the concept of the handlers. So it still works. So that's it wasn't replaced by the new thing that I'm going to show you. It wasn't completely replaced. And in the most generic scenarios, you still need to use a handler because maybe your scenario is such that you never know what's the structure and when you're going to get the messages. But if you have a scenario where your messages are a little bit more structured, that you kind of know how to expect them, you can use this new mode that's called stored messages. And that's what it looks like. So here, instead of having a handler, I don't have any handler. I'm just going to say that I am in stored messages mode. So it's just going to say stored messages equals true. And what this thing does is now the handler basically just captures and stores all the messages, kind of saves them in a list. So now we can just connect. We don't need to do anything upfront because even if the message that we wanted to already appeared, it's going to be stored. And then we can react to the messages as they happen. So this thing, for example, is going to say expect message connected. This code would wait here for that message to arrive, and once it appears, it would keep on. If after a timeout number that you can set up, then it would fail. It would say, no, I didn't get the message that I expected. Yeah, and again, the nice thing about it is that you don't need to know where to put it. You don't need to put it up front, because if the message already received immediately after the connection, it's still going to be stored and wait for it here. And if it only comes later, it's going to either immediately handle it or wait for it to appear. Similarly, we have extract message values. This is a combination of expect message with correlation. So we're expecting to get a message that has session ID equals with a quote, and also extract it. So this thing is going to sit here until we get the message with the session ID. And when we do, it's going to store it in the session ID in this variable. So you can use it just with the regular get correlation value commands. You could do get correlation value and get that thing there, the my session ID, once you have it, and use it in HTTP or anywhere else. But there is also special syntax for WebSockets. So instead of sending, I can send $my session ID, and it's going to use the dynamic value that I got here. So that's the new, I'm calling it stored messages paradigm. And so, yep, it makes a WebSocket working with WebSockets that have some structure much easier and more fluent. So the script looks, instead of having all the logic up front in the handler, it happens where and when it's needed. All right. Moving along. All right. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is correlation meta discovery rules. All right. So this again is a little bit of an advanced topic. So I'm not going to drill down into the really nitty-gritty of it, but I do want to spend some time on it because I want you to know that it exists. It's a very powerful thing, a very powerful capability to added. And I want you to just to keep in the back of your mind. And if you see something that looks like what I'm showing you now, then just so you know that, just, remember that, oh, maybe I need to talk to the Radview guys and ask them about maybe my situation can be solved with a meta discovery rules. All right, so I'll show you kind of what it is, and you'll see. All right. So I have here a script. I'm going to run correlation on it. It's going to find the correlation. So there is some ID and some token here. Yeah, those were the tokens and ID. So correlation found them automatically and replaced them. That's good. Now I'm looking at the rules that got created. So for example, if you look at this rule that got the token, yeah, let me do another thing that show you find all. That's another super duper good feature if you don't know about it with correlation or in general. Find all. Find all shows you all the location where a certain thing happens. So in correlation, if you see a value that you don't know where it's coming from, best thing to do is to use find all. It says, show me where this value appears, either in JavaScript or in the headers or in HTML view, anywhere it exists, I want to know about it. Again, in correlation, this is very useful because it's going to show you where the first place this thing happened. All right. So that's my token here. And if you see that this is the token, and the correlation, usually if it's just a token, the engine is smart enough to say, all right, let's find just this thing that starts with token and that's the value. But here, there are many different tokens. So the engine can't just say token and that's it. So it needs to have more context. So the way it does it, it just adds a little bit more prefix and a little bit more suffix, which is what it did. So that's what this rule that we got here is this thing. It has this number here. Now in my example, I invented this scenario where the token is dynamic, but also the identifier is dynamic. So this number is going to change the next time I run it. Now this becomes a problem for the correlation rule because the rule wouldn't fire next time we find it. We look for this number and that number is also different. So we can't rely on the number. We can't obviously relate on the token because it's also dynamic. All right, so that's the problem that we're trying to address here. So that rule contains bad, like a dynamic prefix, and that's no good. So we have many simpler solutions than what I'm going to show about meta discovery. For example, if we just included the more of the suffix, which is different, so the item name is different here than instead of that part. So I can just manually or edit the rule. I can save the rule and have a little bit less of those dynamic content and more of that suffix, and that's it. So that's the solution for this case, and that's all you need to know. So that's all you need to solve this problem. So for this simple one type of a problem, it's easy to fix it manually or half manually, and that's fine. But what happens if you have this thing over and over again? You have many things where you have a token and the name that you need to get, but you don't want to get the prefix, you want to get that suffix. That's where correlation meta discovery rules come into play. So a correlation meta discovery rule is it's not a rule, it's a meta discovery. It's a meta rule. It helps the engine to find other rules. All right, so that's what it looks like. So this is, first of all, it has its own type. It's not a regular form field value or anything like that. It's a meta discovery rule. Look at it. And what it does is it tells the engine what to look for. So for example, here it uses a regular expression. It's going to say that the prefix is going to look like that. That's the prefix. It's the first capturing group with brackets. So it's the first thing is going to be the prefix that you're going to find. $V represents the value. That's the correlation value. It's going to be different any time, and it's not going to be part of your rule. And then the second part, the suffix, is going to look like that. It's going to have an item name, colon, and something there. So that's a regular expression to say anything inside that. So here we're defining the structure of the rule. And let me activate that and run it. All right. So now we can see that it's also found it. It's a little bit strange because it's not really, it says that the rule is temporary, which is correct. So it didn't, the correlation meta rule doesn't fire directly. I can actually convert this to a rule and we'll have the actual rule. So the meta discovery is something that discovers other rules. It helps the engine finds the right tool, the right rules. So and that's what it's going to look like now. It's going to have the token prefix and it's going to have the nice suffix there. Right. So that's how it looks like now. We have the token is the prefix and the item name is the suffix, and that rule is more stable. It wouldn't change. It doesn't have that dynamic prefix to it. Yeah, so that's the rule. That's the usage of meta rules, and you can see that that's the actual rule that it created. It created a rule with the right token, the right prefix and suffix. Again, what you need to learn for it, you don't need to know exactly how to use it, but you do need to remember that it's out there. And if you have a case where you have many of these situations, again, if it's just for one or two rules, maybe it's easy to just fix it manually. But sometimes, and I've seen places where they had hundreds of these different tokens that are all of the same structure, but it's not the same prefix and suffix, but they all have like a method name equals something or something that is same structure. So this becomes very useful and saves a lot of time. Just gonna mention shortly that, never mind. There are more complicated scenarios here. It can handle also regular expression types of rules that it can create for even more complicated scenarios. If you want to learn more about it, there is a video which details exactly how to use it. And again, if not, it's just something that I want you to remember, that if you have rules that don't look good and you think, no, but this structure, if I could only explain the engine, what is my structure, it could have created great rules for me, then now you can. And that's the correlation meta discovery rules. All right, moving along. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the Illusion banner library. So some of you probably don't know about it. Some of you know a lot about it. So Illusion banner is a tool by Illusion, a company, for managing colleges and applications. So we have, again, some of you don't use it, so you wouldn't know about it, but the people that do use it, and we have several different customers that use it, then there are some manual rules, and there are manual steps that you many oftentimes do when you're trying to simulate course registration. Those are some standard steps that you do. So there's a list of courses and who is registering for what course and how to do that. So we have a library to help with that, because the structure is, we kind of took the knowledge of what it looks like in many different customers, and we generalized it to a library. So yeah, this is way too specific for me to actually show a demo here. But again, if you are using Illusion and you have manual scripts that you do edits, then just so you know that there is also a library to do that, and maybe you consider using it for next time. All right, next thing. So in the console, we have this thing that does JSON-based template. Now, this talk about, just a little bit, gonna go back a little bit about the terminology. We have the scripts, we call them sometimes agenda. That's what you need to do, or that's what you have in the web recorder, basically. And then in the console, we have the template. The template says, so how do we want to run the test? So you can say run this test or ramp up for 30 minutes and then steady state for that long, use those load generators, or maybe use several different scripts. So that's going to be the template. Now, this new thing has a new, simpler syntax. Usually, the template is still a text-based file, but its structure is not very user-friendly. Normally, you would edit it through the console. So in the console, you use this script, use that for that long, and it would create a template. But sometimes you want to have that as a text file. So that's this thing here. I'll show you what it looks like. Yeah, so this is an example of, get bigger. This is an example of what it may look like in a JSON format. So the JSON format says, okay, there's kind of a test, there's a name. And now here there's an array of agendas. It's going to say, this is the agenda, it's going to be another. And if you want to add, you can add another agenda. There is syntax here to specify the percentage between them, if you want one of them to run more, less than the other. You can specify here the load generators. So that's going to be an array of load generators to use. And there is a schedule. So this one is going to ramp up for 20 minutes, going to continue for steady state for 30 minutes, and ramp down for 20 minutes. And this is how many users to run. So the advantages of being a file is just, it's another way to do it. So you can define tests in the console still, like you used to, as a template file. You can use the dashboard to create tests. That's another possibility that you have for you, but that's just another way using a text file. And it's just easier if you're using a source control system. You put it in Git, you can see who made changes for automation, and then there is a command line to run it. So the command line is going to look like, yes, it's going to say, run this JSON file and store the results here. And yeah, save the results file there. So that's going to run automatically, going to run this JSON file. Yeah, this is a simplified version that we have. There are a few more options to that. Let's see if I can quickly grab that. Yeah, so that's kind of the simpler version, but there is also a more advanced version, adding percentage between the different scripts. You can specify sleep options. You can add options to the agenda itself. You can use, instead of load generators, you can use locations, which all right, let me show you a little bit. So in the dashboard, instead of specifying directly load generators, there is the concept of locations that you have. Let's see if I have it here, load generators. Yeah, so the load generator can have a location. The difference here between the location and the load generator, it's another layer of abstraction. You can say, so the location, let's say you're using cloud accounts, you can say this is going to be US1, but you're going to have the same location, US1, 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 but you have several different actual load generator in that location. And based on the max virtual user, WebLOAD is going to decide if it's going to need just one of them or three of them, because now we're running 1,500 users. It's going to say, oh, let's use three of them. So this is the capability you have in the in the dashboard when you're setting tests. So it also is available, yeah, in the JSON format. So you can either use load generators directly or locations with the distribution. Yeah, so that's the JSON kind of automation type of a thing that you can do in the console. All right. Next thing, this is a change, recent change, 13.2 change with the way we work with WebORM floating licenses. Floating licenses traditionally, so if you know that, WebLOAD has two types of licenses. You either have a node locked, which can run on a specific console machine, or you have a floating license. We can use several different floating machines. Yeah. So traditionally, this was related to the physical console. So if you have a license for 3 consoles, yeah, you can install as many consoles as you want, but you can concurrently run only 3 tests, but you need 3 console machines to run them. Now, this new paradigm in 13.2 allows, so now instead of counting the machines, we're counting the concurrent executions, the actual console UI. The reason that is useful, or we added it for what we've seen, is now we're in world of automation. Maybe you have a dashboard and the dashboard wants to run a test. If you have 3 licenses of 3 consoles, you're entitled to run 3 tests, but before that you need 3 different machines, and the setup was a little bit more harder to set up. Now you can have one console. If you have a console which is big enough and strong enough to handle 2 tests concurrently, which shouldn't be too big of a problem, then you can have a single dashboard that's going to say, all right, run these 2 different tests. Hopefully you're going to use load generators. You don't want to overload this single machine, but you're going to have different load generators run these 2 tests concurrently, but they're all going to run on the same physical box, making using the dashboard for bigger teams easier. So instead of you can still have in the dashboard, you have organizations. You can say each organization is using a different console, but now you can use the same console also. And you say, if most of the time we're not really using, we're not going to run 10 tests on the same time exactly, So most of the time it's going to be okay. It still will be, it's not going to block if we have two tests that are running concurrently on the same machine. It's still going to work. Obviously, it is using the license. So if you have three consoles license, you can run three concurrent tests. If you're going to try to run another license, either on that console or in a different console, it's going to say that you don't have enough licenses for that. So that's the concurrent testing capability. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Amazon ECS. Amazon ECS, Elastic Container Services. It's using basically Docker. So that's yet another way to run tests on the cloud. So now if you're using Amazon, you can use either traditionally EC2, but you can also use ECS. They behave very similarly, so it's up to you. Some people prefer to use containers, so it is possible. All right, moving along. I will talk about the dashboard. So I will show you the ChatGPT integration. So the dashboard, hopefully by now you're all aware of it. If not, then welcome to our dashboard. From the dashboard, you can see the test results that you're running in WebLOAD. You can create tests from here. So you can define a test directly from here instead of, you can use the template from the console, but if you want, you can use a script test and you can upload just the script itself. So you have your WLP file, the WebLOAD project file, and you can define the test directly from here. So run 100 users, ramp up for over 20 minutes, run 30 minutes, and steady state for 10 minutes. You'll have a test. These are the locations that I was showing you before, and now you can say some of them are going to use my load generator, but I want 10% to run localhost for some reason. Yep, you can define SLA rules, concurrency, run the test. Yeah, so that's quick thing about the dashboard. And the other thing is that you can see them. So you can see tests, either the tests that you ran before or that are currently running, whether you started them from the dashboard or from the console, you can see them running and you can compare the way that they're running with previous tests that you ran or same tests that you're now running. Do the comparison. So that's the yeah. So we can see the differences between tests. And yeah, so the new thing that I'm going to show you is the explainer panel. The explainer panel tries to explain what we're seeing in the dashboard, and that's the explainer panel. So it uses ChatGPT, OpenAI, AI capabilities to try to explain what we're seeing here. Now this feature isn't enabled by default because you do need an OpenAI license for that, or at least an account. So the way you set it up, there is a explainer setting JSON file that you need to put your OpenAI token, and you get that OpenAI token by creating an account with OpenAI, and they will give you an API to use token. Yeah, if you don't have it, then you still get something out of this page. It still will have, if you look at this page, it has this static part here. So now I'm showing page time and throughput. So it explained that the page time is the average time in second it takes to get the page and its resources, and it should stay fairly consistent even in the loads as the loads has increases. All right, so that's just, even if you don't use the integration, that's a useful, if you don't have the ChatGPT, that's the only thing that you would see here. Yeah, that thing would say that's not configured. So that's already useful if you're unsure about the meaning of what is a page time and how should it behave. So that's the thing. But the next thing is we're asking ChatGPT, now, what do you think about this thing? So it says the page time remains relatively stable and low for loads that out to around 30. Yeah, so this is my load size. 30. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah. But it begins to increase notably as it increases. And now you can see that it's indicating potential performance issue, which is, I would actually say the same thing. That's what this thing tries to explain to you. The page time is not should not be correlated to the load size. If we have one user, it takes them 1 second to log in. If I have 100 users, I don't want it to take 100 seconds for them to log in. I want it to keep the same level of performance for many users. So that is the manual explanation, and also that's how ChatGPT sees that. So I won't go over everything, but you can do the same thing for throughput, and you can add other things, response time. So you'll have also explanation about response time. So that's ChatGPT. I think it's very useful instead of you're unsure about how things should behave and what you're seeing in a session. I think that's a very useful thing. Obviously, the disclaimer that ChatGPT is AI. It can hallucinate and say things. So always kind of make sure that you think, oh, that makes sense, or it doesn't. It's always a good thing, but um, we definitely see improvements in the way it works. So that's on them, not on us. But ChatGPT 4.0 gives pretty good and consistent answers, which makes them more useful. Note that if you're trying to use the free version, they have a free version, 3.5. You can play with it, but there is a significance difference in its ability to actually understand things. So 3.5 will say things, but in much less reliable, much less likely to give you something useful. It's much more likely to say something that's not really useful. But 4 and 4.0 and the newer versions, they definitely have much more improved and much more useful. Yes, so that's this thing. Okay, next thing I will show you. So when defining a script test, yeah, so I kind of walked through that before. I'm just gonna note something here that was also added recently, which is the sleep time control. That's so here you can control general things like W Global's settings. Basically, you can set from here, but this thing also allows you to set up sleep control. So again, it's useful if you have a script. The script has different settings in the ID. In the recording, you want to say sleep time is recorded, have maximum time of 10 seconds, or no sleep, or random. All these settings you can do from here, and also control the transaction behavior. If transactions are going to include sleep time or not, or both timers. So that setup you can also do directly from the dashboard when you define a test. What else I have? The dashboard settings can be defined from an XML file. So we already had some of the things defined there, but now we have more things. So when you're running the dashboard, it was a little bit harder to set it up. If it was running as a service, it was one file. If it was running as a process, it was a different file. So now we're consolidating everything for one file that you'll be able to control all the different settings there. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I had to say. That was the highlights, I would say. If you look at if there is this page, radview.com/changelog, it has a much more detailed explanation. So I covered maybe the first 2 or 3 things, but there's also lots of other goodies in the older versions. So always have also other smaller things that are not even listed. Always good to use the latest version. We have security improvements in all the latest versions, newer versions of kind of third-party libraries, and lots of small improvements, goodies. And you can also download it from here. So there's going to be the download from here. Note, if you're switching to a new major version, so from 13.1 to 13.2, you need a license. So before you do that, you can download the file, you can use the recorder, but if you want to run it in the console, you need a new license. So contact us before that to get a new license. If you're switching a build, it doesn't matter. If you have a 13.2 build 186 and you want to switch to 188, no problem. You don't need a new version. You know, a new license. So that's the changelog page. And other page I want to introduce to you is docs.graduate.com. That's our new documentation web page. It's in the making. I would say we're mostly ready. We're maybe ironing small wrinkles with it, but that's going to replace the PDF files that we have. I would say that we're still ironing wrinkles. I would say you probably still can use it. You can start using it now. Just go to drfly.com. It's live. So you have instead of having all these several different PDFs, everything is here in one place. So you have the recording, scripting guide, the console guide. All the guides are in one place. You can search them. So yeah, WebSockets. So this is the example I was talking about, the WebSockets. You can see it here. Yeah, so this was my stored messages version, if you remember from earlier. So here is an example of what you can do with it and what's the meaning of each function. Yeah, so that's another new thing that you can take advantage of. And that's it. So thank you really everybody for joining. If you have specific questions, you can ask them now, but if you want to ask later, yeah, you
So
can
yeah,
use a.
I will jump in. Yam, thank you for an exciting session. It was really insightful. We do have one question from the audience. You can see it under the Q&A, and I can also read it here, so maybe the others will hear the answer as well. So the question is there an option to use dynamic values in boundaries in manual correlations?
Um, Interesting. All right, let me see what I make of it. If it's manual, then I guess you can do what you want if it's manual. So the question was, can I use a dynamic value in the prefix? So, all right, let me say it like that. So the correlation engine automatically creates the code. And the code is here. So the correlation engine has magic in it. All right, it has all kind of heuristics. It's pretty smart. It tries to find the best rule that would work in your scenario. So it has a few different tricks up its sleeve that it's trying to see. Again, what would be the best prefix? Or maybe I shouldn't even use a prefix. I should use the DOM, something like that. After it's done its work, that code is simple code that you can always change. So it's always built out of two functions. Set correlation value. It has the name that you want to put and the value, which is going to be this whole thing, and the original value just for comparison and reporting thing. And the thing inside here is going to be the second function, which is the actual comparison function, actual extraction function. Okay, so that thing, for example, is extract value, but it could be another function like here, extract regex function. So that's another function to use regular expression for extractions. Conversely, the other way around it is to, if you want to get a value that you extracted, then you can use get correlation value. Now, answering your question, extract value uses this token if we know, like here, that the beginning of this token was actually a dynamic value that we got here. I could say that this thing is going to be extract value, but the prefix is, yeah, it's going to be extract value. The prefix is going to be that correlation value that we got from here. And then use it there. So that's going to be the most direct answer to what you asked. So that's going to be using a dynamic value inside a prefix. I would say that I know that it is possible to do it. You can do it automatically. The engine wouldn't know to put a dynamic part inside that part. So it cannot happen automatically. But I would say let us know. Maybe there are better ways to do it. And I actually never found a real good reason to do it. So there are regular expression types of rules, there are DOM-based rules, there are JSON-based rules, XML-based rules, many, many different powerful rules that you can maybe do, which are more reliable than using a token. But it is possible. Okay.
Okay, cool. We
Um,
also have a statement, less of like a question, but kudos to you,
okay.
Yam, and the product team. I see that someone of our entities just wrote, best thing is the WebLOAD documentation. It was really difficult to find something in PDFs. This is a great improvement, so thank you. And from my end, I want to say thank you for the product team and for you, Yam, for working hard on that. Way to go.
Very cool, and thank you for thanking us. Yeah, so we do like it, and we think it's a big improvement. Makes much easier for you to see the documentation and for us to update it. So we're really excited and happy about it.
Okay, we have another
So
question. Another question, yeah, is do we need a special license to use the dashboard?
no, the dashboard is part of the WebLoad installation. You may have it and you're not aware of it. So if you go to localhost 3000 is where you're going to find your dashboard, and the default user is admin with password admin. You can change it in the installation and also later, but that's the default. So yeah, you have it. It's part of our offering. So I do recommend using it. It's very powerful.
Okay, one more. I see that we have a few more questions, but I will let only the last one come in. And guys, feel free to reach out to support with any other questions you may have. And Yam and his team will answer that. So the last question for now is, can we use two different cloud providers in the same test?
Yes, so the answer is yes. I didn't really show it. I talked about it, but I didn't really show it. Um, yeah, I just mentioned ECS, but I didn't show it. So that's where this thing sits, cloud options. And you can define here the many accounts you see. I have Microsoft Azure, I have Google Clouds, I have also ECS. So that's what ECS looks like. Yeah, so it's when you add something, you can say use this thing, use that thing. So each one of these things is an account. And when you actually want to run a test, let's do that. Um, so we have the load generator definitions. You can say, oh, use this cloud account and create 3 more machines, but these are not really machines. They're not really running now. They're just templates of machine. And when I run the test, I can say, okay, give me 2 USCs. These are Amazon machines, and give me 1 Azure machine. And also in Amazon, you can have several different machines in this. So one of them can be US East, one of them can be US West, one of them can be big or small, different, settings. And now when I actually start the test, when I'm gonna click start, that's when we're gonna spin up the machines. We're gonna ask Amazon for the machines, we're gonna ask Azure for the machines, and we can all run them all together in synchronize. When the test is over, we terminate the machines, and that's it.
Cool. So thank you for the answer, Yam. Again, guys, we are going to send you an email with the recording so you can watch it also later on if needed. And I want to thank you all for joining us in this webinar. We are going to have future sessions as well. Yam, thank you for leading us throughout the webinar. And any questions you may have, reach out to support. As always, they are very responsive. Thank you again and have a good day. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Happy holidays.